Hey guys, Cam for 15, back at it with another video for you guys, back with another One Piece live action episode review for you guys as we are continuing on with the One Piece live action show. And yeah, listen, man, the One Piece live action show has been great. Now, as of this recording, season 2 has dropped. But I was just like, you know what? Let me do at least, obviously a continue the reviews of the reviews and things like that. So, essentially what we see in this episode is the Baratie stuff. We get the Baratie, which, it's a good episode adapting what we saw in the Baratie, right? So, as I was messing with my camera a bit, sorry for the slowdown. You have it to where we pick up where we last left off after the end of Syrup Village. So essentially, if you remember, Garp was on the hunt for Luffy and the others, and essentially what happens is, again, it's diverting from how the manga and the anime went, because at this point Garp wasn't even involved in the series, right? So essentially what happens is Garp is doing his thing where he grabs the cannonballs and he starts tossing it at them. And it's funny because they're like, okay, we got to combat the Marines. And you really see the inexperiences that the Straw Hats have at this point, because they don't know how to combat against a Navy. Mind you, it's Garp, a Navy Admiral, or a Vice Admiral, right? But essentially, Luffy fires back and uses a Gum Gum balloon to bounce the cannonball back, and essentially, it destroys the sail from the Marine ship, from Garp's ship. And dude, if there was anything I remember from this, Garp is insane. And you obviously find out why he's insane a bit about this, because it's like he's trying to show Luffy, like, this is not the life that you should be living. You should be living the life of a Marine. So when he's just like laughing all kind of evilish and hysterical, like, oh boy, I know I'm gonna get you, right? That type of thing. I'm just like, what? And then you just have it where Helmeppo and Kobe look at him like, this fucking guy is crazy. So you get that point, right? You get that. So, Luffy and the others go into the fog. Now, Nami is kind of just at the aspiration. I'm like, bro, Luffy needs to talk to us. He should have told us that his grandfather was in the Navy. So she kind of gets Zoro to tell him, and Luffy's doing his hat, right? And Zoro's like, hey, you want to talk about your, grandfather or something like that? And obviously Luffy's like, no, I'm good. And obviously Zoro's just like, okay. And he walks back, he said he's good. And Nami's like, I know you didn't talk to him. Now, this is when Luffy starts smelling food and everything, and he can tell, like, oh, I smell food. So then they go in, and then they see the Baratie. And honestly, the set for the Baratie was really good in the live action. I love how they structured it. They made it actually look like a very pristine, prestigious, like damn near Hell's Kitchen restaurant. So there's that, right? So they essentially go into the Baratie, and because they didn't have a reservation, it looks like they're not going to get it now. Nami uses her womanly charms to get the waiter to be like, okay, yeah, sure. Which, funny enough, I'm watching already episode 1 of season 2, and let's just say, bro, I don't know if they're gonna go the direction. I want to say Nami being a skank, but Nami being the seductress she is. It's the second time they've kind of pictured it where they made Nami act like, oh, I know I'm a very attractive girl. I won't spoil it, but she hits on, she basically messes and kind of like, tries to seduce this character and everything. Now he didn't fall for it, but again, you get my point. So I kind of actually somewhat kind of like this change in the Nami character for the live action, where she's actually using her womanly charms to basically get these guys to, well, one, simp, but also two, just basically give her what she wants. Because in the anime, we kind of see how she somewhat does that. She doesn't do that all that much, right? Like, there's times where she be like, "Oh, please don't hurt me, please." But she doesn't go the route of being like the seductress type of, "Oh, I know I'm smoking hot. Come over here and I'll entertain you," right? Look, I guess again, they want to make the live action show a little bit more mature. Even though the anime and the manga is a mature series, but it definitely really feels like, okay, we're making this for the One Piece fans who are adults, who are mature. And look, again, when you have Emily Rudd playing Nami, I think let's just be honest. I think anybody would fold. Anybody would fold. All I know is I've been seeing this clip around, I guess a part in the Drum Island stuff, and oh, when I review that episode, I think you might get me gooning over to Emily Rudd. But yeah, I saw that image going around on Twitter already, and I'm like, oh, I knew Emily Rudd was attractive, but oh, okay. Yeah, she most definitely is Nami. Anyways, so they enter into the Baratie, and basically, what is it? This is when the Sanji obviously shows up, and he's having a spout with Zeph. I love the voice actor. I love the actor who plays Zeph in the live action. I don't know, but he really gave off this. He gave off this damn near freaking Gordon Ramsay just appeal. Like, he spoke like he was Gordon Ramsay. He acted like as he was Gordon Ramsay. Shit, you can make an argument. The facial feature makes him look like Gordon Ramsay. Technically, if they wanted to, it would have been a lot of money too, but they could have made Gordon Ramsay actually be Zeph, which would have been hilarious. But honestly, the actor who played Zeph was really good, right? So again, Sanji is doing what he's doing, and Zeph scolds him for cooking, and basically, not really realistically, not the way he wants it done. And that's when he's like, "All right, boy, you're going on the line, right?" So, and obviously they have their bickering back and forth, just like how we saw in the manga and the anime. And essentially, this is when Sanji meets the Straw Hats. He obviously like, "Okay, what can I get to you for you guys?" And then also too, this is when he sees Nami. He starts hitting on Nami, and it's funny because after he ends up leaving, right, the other Straw members, Zoro and Usopp, make fun of her, saying like, "Oh, looks like Nami's got a boyfriend. Oh, wow." And at first she's like, "Stop it," but then she starts just laughing with them, and you kind of just you kind of see, and I'll speak about it later in the episode, which I kind of actually do like how they portrayed it in this episode. So again, we cut back over to Garp, and he's talking about like trying to handle this Luffy problem. And this is when we actually, again, get a weird structure or a weird change in how it differs from the live action to the anime. So in the live action show, we actually have it to where we see Garp actually call Mihawk. And again, we actually kind of see Mihawk absolutely in the part of the series when he was fighting against Don Krieg, and we see live action Don Krieg. And we just see how Mihawk just absolutely destroys Don Krieg. And I think the change here is he in this is, I believe he actually killed. I think he killed Don Krieg in this episode, which is a massive change. Don Krieg. So the Don Krieg influence was only this, and then we end up seeing one of his henchmen, right? Which shows up that he doesn't really have a big influence. He just does the whole thing where Sanji gives him the food, but after that, again, he doesn't do anything. Like, he's just, it's it for him. So the live action massively changed it from the fact that they didn't make Don Krieg an integral piece. Now maybe that's because they felt like the Luffy versus Don Krieg fight was unrealistic to do in live action. Um, Maybe that's why they felt. And then two, they probably wanted to shorten it as well. And then obviously when we get into the next episode, they did change a lot from how the series, the rest of the East Blue saga went. But basically, this is when Garp's like, "Hey, I need you to hunt down this pirate called Monkey D. Luffy, right? Straw Hat Luffy, and things like that, right?" So essentially, like Mihawk's like, "Oh, okay, fine, I'll do that, right?" So essentially, that's what happens, right? Now, um, essentially, again, they're eating and everything, and basically Luffy's like, "Don't worry, let's use this meal as a way to celebrate our victory." And Nami's like, "What the hell are you talking about?" And everything. And obviously Luffy's like, "Oh, talking about escaping from the Marines." And Nami's just like, "Dog, we barely escaped those dudes. On top of it, you never told us that that the Vice Admiral was your grandfather. So you need to explain about that." Anyways, this is when Sanji comes up with the receipt. He's like, "All right, here's your receipt." And obviously, Luffy's like, "Okay, here you go. Just tell the chef thank you for the meal, and tell him the food's gonna be on my tab in the future. I'll come back and pay it off." So when Zeph gets word of this, he's like, "All right, who the hell is Straw Hat Luffy?" Right? And he comes up and obviously he's like, "So I heard you're not trying to pay your meal, your food, right?" And Luffy's like, "Oh yeah, don't worry. Listen, I'm gonna be king of the pirates. So here's what I'm going to do. When I become king of the pirates, I'm gonna get all this treasure. I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna give you this treasure. I'm gonna pay off this meal, right?" So just like, dude, that's not how it fucking works, bro. This man tried to get away scot-free and just said, "Hey, don't worry. When I become king of the pirates, I'll have all this treasure and I'll pay you back." So at least he was honorable. At least he said, "Hey, I'm not gonna leave. I'm gonna actually hold up on my word and pay you for this great meal that we just ate." Zeph wasn't having it, so he's like, "All right, chore boy, you're coming over here. You're gonna pay off your debt." So, and that's by doing the dishes, which is again exactly identical to the anime. Now, essentially what you have here, again, is Nami, Usopp, and Sanji. No, Nami, Usopp, and Sanji. Nami, Usopp, and Zoro just hanging out and everything. And basically, it's Nami just talking about, again, she's still upset about Luffy not telling them that Garp is their grandfather and everything, right? Now, Zoro was kind of like, "Okay, look, I get it. Yes, it's something that he probably should have told us." And this is when he's like, "Look, but at the end of the day, we went up against freaking clowns. We went up against a freaking, fake butler and his pirate crew. And then we also escaped a vice admiral. What's the big deal?" And Nami's like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa. Chill, chill, chill. Listen, yeah, we escaped from those times, but who's to say there's a next time?" And she actually goes on and she's like, "Look, man, I can't get caught because," and then she stops herself. Because we know why she can't get caught, because we know, like, okay, she's a part of the Arlong crew at this point, and at the same time, she was trying to save up berries to pay off the debt. Now, she doesn't reveal this, but again, it's that implying that, okay, yada, yada, yada. Now, obviously, Zoro's like, you can tell something's up with her, right? So then what happens is essentially he's like, "Hey, how about this? I'll get you a drink, right? I'll get everybody a drink on me," which is not a Nami staple. She typically makes people pay her back, but okay. And obviously, Zoro's like, "Yeah, sure, right?" So she goes up to the bar, right? And she's like, "Hey, more drinks." And then she's like, "Oh yeah, say, do you know a way where I can get to where I can get to, by taking ship?" And this dude just pops. He's like, "You know what? I can take it." And he's like, "You want your friends too?" And she's like, "No, just me," right? Please. And then he's like, "Okay, meet me tomorrow afternoon and or first thing in the morning," and that's the thing, right? Now, this is when we also cut back to we also cut back to Kobe and Hamepo. Kobe overheard that obviously Garp called in Mihawk to handle the situation, right? And this is when Kobe's like, "I think you're telling Hamepo, like, I think you're right. Garp is a freaking lunatic." And obviously Hamepo's like, "Of course I told you. Of course I'm right. I'm always right. What the hell are you talking about, right?" So then we cut back to Luffy, and he's again doing chores. Sanji's there, also kind of a little bit assisting as well. And basically, this is kind of when they talk about Sanji's dream and how he wants to see it all blue and everything. But at the same time, too, he's also hung down here. Now, Luffy does compliment him and say, like, hey, man, your blue fish meal was great. And he's like, oh, you tried that? And everything. And obviously, Sanji is just like, well, it's the first time somebody's kind of said that because I know Chef Zeph doesn't approve of it. And obviously, Luffy's like, what are you talking? Why would he not approve? Like, you're great. Your food is great. And obviously, Luffy's like, hey, man, why don't you just like, you know, do your dream? And he talks about the all blue. But and eventually, when Gen shows up, this is when Luffy also does ask like about like, hey, well, you should join my crew. Like, you're a nice guy. And obviously, Sanji's like, no, I can't exactly do that. And we know why, because he feels like he owes it to Zeph to stay along and be a cook, right? So there's that. Now, essentially, what happens too, um, is, oh, well, we cut back to Nami and Zoro, right? So Nami kind of plays, I guess you can say a truth or like dare or just telling each other's biggest secrets, right? And Zoro basically says, what is it? Basically Zoro says what he does and everything, because Nami kind of implies like, oh, you're doing this, but he's like, nah, I'm just a wandering dude. And then he basically asks her, it's like, okay, so what's your story? Where are you from? And she's like, well, I just have a small house with a tangerine grove, so that's it. And then at the same time, she also talks about how like she doesn't really have any friends. She just had kind of kept to herself and everything. So, that's kind of that's kind of that, right? So essentially, what happens is Usopp, who's drunk, mind you, he's like 17 at this point. He's underage and he's drinking and he's drunk. He talks about Luffy and everything. And obviously this when Mihawk is there and he's like, why don't you show me to your cabin? He's like, oh yeah, don't worry. I'll show you. I'll meet you in the main crew. Now we do cut back over to Kobe and Garp. And basically Kobe kind of questions Garp, saying like, dog, why are you calling a warlord to handle Luffy? And he's like, I can't. He's a pirate. That's what I gotta do, right? And also, I forgot to mention too, Helmeppo and Kobe also explain, because Kobe at this point doesn't know what a warlord, and Helmeppo's like, dude, are you stupid or something? And basically, Helmeppo basically explains like the Seven Warlord system is basically where the government hires pirates to do essentially their bidding. And basically, Kobe's like, wait, why would the Marines get pirates to work with them? And he's like, well, it's just a law of order. And obviously he was foreshadowing with like the emperors and everything and stuff like that. But that's kind of the thing. And Kobe's kind of distraught, like, and that's what he kind of tells Garp, like, why are you having a pirate handle another pirate's business when we should be the ones handling the business? And basically, Garp is like, listen, son, what you're doing is, the aspect of justice, and you see, you can't basically hold back. Like, it's the whole point of what I taught you in that game, right? So there's that, right? And he basically talks about how, the laws in the world doesn't, apply to everybody. Like, there's difference in laws, and he's right about that. And basically, Garp is like, the question is, what you decide. And he does go on to say, Garp does tell him like, hey man, I had a chance to be a fleet admiral, but you want to know why I didn't decide to choose it? It's because I would honestly lose the freedom of what I can actually do, because I would be restricted with what I'm doing, and I'm being told by the government about that. And basically, it's just his way of saying, look, man, world's not fair. So, look, our job is to have order and peace. And even if it's not fair and it's probably not the right thing to do, at the end of the day, we got to do something to keep the peace. And he's basically telling him, like, hey, man, are you going to make the tough decision to know what to do is right? Even if you do know in your heart of hearts, it's probably not the wrong thing to do, but you got to do with what is said, right? So there's that. Anyways, Usopp introduces Mihawk to the Straw Hats, and obviously Zoro knows who he is. Zoro's like, you're Hawkeye Mihawk. You're one of the strongest swordsmen. You're obviously the greatest swordsman in all of the land, right? And obviously Mihawk's like not having it. He's like, yeah. Thank you for that. I'm not giving no autographs. Where's Straw Hat Luffy? And obviously you just have it to where Zoro then makes the ultimatum. He throws down the gun. He's like, hey, I want to challenge you and test my skills. I want to see who the best is, and I want to kill you to do it. So essentially, this is when I was like, okay, tomorrow morning, be ready, right? So this is when the Straws have a huddle meeting, right? And the thing is, Nami is trying to tell Luffy, like, hey, Luffy, this is a dumb idea. Tell Zoro he needs to stop this. He's going to die, right? Because Nami at this point, she's like, no, I don't want you to die stupidly because you're going up against the world's greatest swordsman. And obviously, this is when, at first, it looks like Luffy asked him, saying, he's like, you know what, Zoro, maybe Nami's right. Maybe you shouldn't fight this guy. And Luffy's like, or Zoro's like, Luffy, don't you remember what I told you when we first met? And it was a funny gag where he was talking about like when he first, but basically Luffy's like, you told me your dream was to become the strongest swordsman in all the world. And basically that's when Luffy's like, oh, okay, you want to do this for your goal to achieve your dream. Now, Nami's not having it. She's like, Luffy, are you stupid? He's going to get himself killed. You need to stop him. That's your first mate. You're his captain. Like, do something about this. And in Luffy's eye, he feels like, listen, Nami, I respect the fact that you want me to do something, but I'm not going to stand in Zoro's dream. If Zoro's dream is to become the strongest swordsman, then I want my friend to live out his dream and achieve his dream. So I'm not going to get in the way of that and stop him. And Nami, again, is still not having it because she's like, no, I'm not going to allow this to happen. Like, it's stupid. Like, why? You don't need to be doing this. And Zoro then replies, like, why do you even care so much about this? Right? And this is when Nami's like, idiot, it's because because you are my friend. I care about you. And Zoro kind of gives it right back to her by saying, like, I thought you just said in our discussion you didn't have any friends, so now you apparently view me as a friend. And Zoro, what we see is he's been wary of Nami and her allegiance and how trustworthy she can be, right? So this is then what. So then the next day, what happens is you have the duel between Mihawk and Zoro, and again, you get basically what you saw in the anime and the manga, where Mihawk pulls a small little dagger. Zoro is like, "What the hell is that?" and everything. And he's like, "I'll beat you." And eventually, you just have it to where Zoro just absolutely gets worked by Mihawk and gets defeated, and everything. And then he obviously does the thing like, "All right, slice me down," right? And everything, right? So you have that moment, and then you do have the moment to where, and then you just have it to where Mihawk's like, you know what? I'm gonna let you go, Stride Luffy. I'm quite intrigued to see where your story goes, right? So you get that. Obviously, Luffy is worried about Zoro because he got badly hurt and everything, right? And stuff like that. So essentially, you just have it to where this is when you get the moment in the series when Zoro makes his declaration to Luffy that he'll never lose another fight again, and everything, and that he promises to beat Mihawk. So it was a cool moment, albeit I guess you can you can kind of say, especially when he did it, or when just the way the live action version looks, you can make an argument it did look a little cringe with the way he's doing it as opposed to the anime, because in the live action version, I don't know, I guess you can make an argument Mackenyu didn't sound that convincing like how in the anime version, where the man was bawling his eyes out in front of Luffy, swearing that he would never lose another fight. And in here, it does come across, the way he says it was a little bit forced. And then too, at the same time, I don't, he wasn't crying, or you didn't at least see Mackenyu like just shedding tears. I'm not saying like he's gonna be bawling his eyes out, but like at least tears being shed from his eyes with the disappointment. It's kind of just like, he's just like, I will never lose again. And I'm just like, I think they could have made that a little bit more better there. They could have maybe had Mackenyu have some tears running down his eyes to make the scene a little bit more emotional, because it did come across a little bit forced with the way he said it, and kind of a little bit cringy. But then again, when you're trying to translate stuff from an anime to a live action setting, and you have these moments, right? You know, of course, it's gonna look cringy in live action as opposed to the anime where, in instances, the animation can show a little bit more, you know, emotion and everything, right? So you know, there's that right there. But that's basically it of the episode, and that's where the episode ends off for that. So, solid episode. Again, I was appreciating the fact that there were different of changes in there, and then obviously as we're winding down with season one, that's when the most changes. And honestly, the next episode is probably like the one episode out of the entire first season of the East Blue Saga where you had changes. Well, until you get to season two of Logtown, episode one of the Logtown arc, that is where my fucking god, let's just say they get cameos out of the ass in that episode. I was shocked about that, but I'll give you my thoughts on that first episode of season two when we get to it. But if you guys like the video, leave a like, put in the comment section your thoughts, hit that subscribe button if you want to get more One Piece live action content or any other One Piece content I upload to the channel and things like that. But till then, guys, stay safe out there. Have a great rest of your day or your night or whenever you turn this video, and I will catch you guys later. Till then, guys, peace.